As a leading global provider of Maximo change management, training and e-learning, we need to make sure that the businesses we partner with benefit from improved productivity and maximise their return on investment. The services we provide must enable users to develop increased confidence, competence and knowledge when using Maximo. But the challenges of COVID-19 have meant that our customers are working differently, so we have adapted with them.
It's been fantastic to watch the uptake and seamless transition from classroom to virtual training. In the past, this has often been seen as less effective, but our results certainly show otherwise. People are a lot more familiar and comfortable with web conferencing at work and at home. A good trainer ensures that we have active engagement and interaction. It's certainly not a passive experience, and our clients have given us very positive feedback.
Just as there are advantages to classroom training, there's also advantages to remote training. We've been successful not by trying to duplicate the classroom experience, but by harnessing learning techniques uniquely available with web conferencing software, such as screen share assessments and collaborating on training scenarios in real time with other learners. Our overall 98% satisfaction rating of our training course delivery has remained unchanged through the transition.
Our position as a software training and e-learning company gives us a unique ability to provide our clients with webinars, virtual one-on-one training, e-learning software simulations, training videos, or blended learning, which integrates a variety of training methods.
It's change times indeed, but Electra is responding. Our Maximo change management, training and e-learning offerings are stronger than ever and well suited for the way our customers work today.
BPD Zenith is a leading IBM Maximo enterprise asset management partner for asset-intensive organizations worldwide. Founded in 1994, we have over 26 years of focused experience in Maximo with a depth and breadth across hundreds of companies spanning nearly every industry. As one of the few Maximo partners providing enterprise asset management and asset performance management expertise across North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific, we combine a local presence with global expertise to deliver tailored asset management solutions and trusted partnerships wherever you are on your maintenance journey. The depth of BPD Zenith's services span every aspect of Maximo, from our ability to manage your Maximo licensing, provide full-scale implementations, asset transitions, upgrades, enhancements, customizations, and extending your ability to monitor the health and performance of your assets through BPD's Love Your Assets, which utilizes the IBM APM suite via the IoT services in a subscription-based service. All of these offerings can be provided in your hosted or on-premise environment, as well as through our cutting-edge Maxi Cloud software as a service to future-proof your modern business needs. BPD has developed leading-edge industry accelerators as a result of years of experience working directly with clients and understanding the specific needs and specializations within their segments. BPD's experience in working so closely with our trusted clients has allowed us to create templates to streamline implementations in industry verticals, thereby reducing time and cost to implement, along with standardizing business processes to accommodate best practices for organizations. BPD is a company based on innovation and community. We are an extension of Maximo for all, and in such, we participate in numerous ways to give back to the global Maximo community. We have developed the world-renowned Max Tech, and recently developed the new online Max Teach programs for all Maximo users worldwide. We pride ourselves on trust, reliability, and partnerships with our clients. We at BPD Zenith thank you for your trust and look forward to our connected future.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your short break. I know we're about 9 minutes behind, but I think at this point we're just going to kind of roll with it. With that, what I'd like to do is introduce the CNRL gang. We've got Chris, Tima, and Roger delivering some of their management of change implementation. CNRL has been a long time member of the Canadian Maximo User Group, who's attended meetings for, frankly, as long as I can remember. So really looking forward to seeing what they're presenting around their MOC solutions.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our presentation today. I am Fatima Castellanos, and with me, Chris Sawyer and Roger Laycott on behalf of Canadian Natural. Today, we are glad to present the implementation of the Management of Change Maximo application at Canadian Natural. In this presentation, we will cover the overview of the implementation project, the training challenges, and the application demo. Feel free to ask any question. However, I do ask that you wait until the end of the presentation to ask. Before I start, I would like to share with you who we are at Canadian Natural. We are an effective and efficient operator with a diversified portfolio of assets in North America, the UK, North Sea, and offshore Africa, which enables us to generate significant value even in challenging economic environments. We continually strive for safe, effective, efficient, and environmentally responsible operations while executing economic development of our diverse asset base. Our balance of mix of natural gas is currently an average production of approximately 1,165 barrels of equivalent per day. The company currently operates with a total of 10,180 employees. Our mission statement is to develop people to work together to create value for the company's shareholders by doing it right with fun and integrity. So now I'm going to give it to you a brief presentation for who we are, the presenters. So let me introduce Chris Sawyer. Chris is our lead for the Asset Management Application Improvement at Canadian Natural. Chris has been with Canadian Natural for over 15 years and has a large experience in Maximo, pretty much the same time that he has been working for Canadian Natural. Chris is very passionate with Maximo, and his role actually is included overseeing the development of all Maximo application and enhancement requests to ensure they meet Canadian Natural development standards and are in line with the business functionality expectation. Roger Laycott. Roger is our training coordinator from Electra Learning. So Roger has been with the CNRL approximately around 7 years and has over 6 years experience with Maximo and 2 years with MOC. Roger is a training specialist who has been engaged with CNRL for several years. In addition to facilitating CNRL Maximo training sessions, he leads a team of Maximo trainers who train across the organization. Myself, over 30 years professional career, I had the opportunity to take a variety of roles across the globe in the engineering and construction field. I probably have more than over 10 years experience in management of change process in different enterprises. Currently, I am the business support for all the engineering, integrity, and safety related Maximo applications at Canadian Natural. So let me give it to you guys a little overview how we start with the management of change implementation project. So an corporate MOC working community was created back in 2015 with all divisions represented in that committee. So from conventional, from thermal, from oil sands for the UK. So the MOC corporate committee is the governing body of the MOC process across all sites at Canadian Natural. After many meetings and workshops and using the governing document that it was the outcome from 3 years working on, so they created the MOC manual, and we use the MOC manual as the basis for our functional spec. Also, the existing facility change request application in Maximo that was rolled up thermal side, we use that one as a proof of concept as well, and also multiple workshop to get the feedback from sites and users. Implementing the MOC and Maximo was one of the original deliverables identified during the AMM evaluation project, made with the proper level of authority within the organization. So let me tell you, the management of change was the first company-wide application rollout. I would like to show you guys some statistics that we keep in with the management of change project. So we had the retired system remedy and manual process using our oil sands. The facility change request maximum application user at thermal, manual process at conventional, and next price at jack fish. All this system has been removed from management of change at Canadian Natural. So we have converted so far 26,000 records over maximum management of change application. And currently we have over 1,600 MOC users and over 6,000 maximum MOC records. I would like to talk about the management of change process. So management of change process is the system, or it's a process that we use to identify, evaluate, and mitigate the risk associated with that change. Changes in our facilities and pipeline are necessary for our business to be safe and competitive. That's why we use the management of change. So the management of change process consists of 7 stages. Let's start with the initiating MOC. Anyone can initiate an MOC and submit for concept approval. So then the MOC goes to approve to evaluate. The MOC in this stage can be rejected or approved based on the business objectives and potential conflicts with planned changes. Then the MOC goes to evaluate. Under this stage, the MOC champion is assigned, the design development package is prepared with the proper documentation, the risk is assessed, and the MOC is reviewed. Then the MOC goes for approval. And again, at this point, the MOC will either be approved or rejected based on the decision that will be documented. If the MOC is approved, goes for implementation, which is the physical implementation in the field, and goes for authorized to go live once the pre-startup safety review is complete to close out the MOC based on the required documentation has been updated. Let me talk a little more the roles and responsibilities within the MOC process. The requester. The requester is anyone that submits the MOC with clear definition, scope, and reason for the change. The submission approver, responsible for approving or rejecting the MOC request. The discipline lead assigns the MOC champion and also review and close the MOCs. The champion, accountable for driving the MOC until the closure step is complete. Champion is the key role in the MOC process. Reviewers is a group or individual responsible for reviewing the MOC package. Approver, approve or reject the MOC. Execution team, responsible to implement the change, reports to MOC champion with progress. Operations, operation is accountable for authorize the change to go live. So this is pretty much our roles and responsibility. And let me show you the corporate Canadian National MOC process swim lane, where are related, the 7 stages are related with the roles and responsibility. Royal Lakewood is going to present to you the training challenges.
All right. So when it came to training for this project, there were certainly some challenges to overcome. For one, we had about 1,500 users to train. And in addition to that, there were various MOC responsibilities that people had. There were geographic challenges as well. So we had about 18 different locations. And these ranged from Grand Prairie, which is up in northern Alberta, all the way down to southern Saskatchewan, and just about every place in between. And in addition to that, many of them were at remote sites, only accessible really at a very small airport, and in some cases, some very bumpy roads. We also had to look at training sustainment. What would the immediate support look like for people when they were just done their training, starting to use the system? And also, what did the long-term training sustainment look like? So this is what we did. We did classroom training, and we scheduled training at all the different locations. And we trained alongside the MOC subject matter experts, and that's something that proved to be very effective. We also had a Maximo training environment built, and we created training IDs to replicate all the MOC roles. And we worked through the MOC application with all users. So when it came to that immediate sustainment and support for people, one of the things we did is we created quick reference cards. And these were designed to be a quick and simple and easy reference for people when they were done training and they were just starting to use the application in real life. And one of the nice things about these is that we were able to create these to align nicely with the different process stages that were in the application itself. So as you can see here, we have a bit of a demo going here on the right-hand side, and I'll just talk through it here. But we were looking at what would be good for long-term training sustainment. And e-learning was certainly the answer for this. And so we were able to create e-learning that had consistent learning outcomes with the classroom course. And we are able to build this to be interactive and engaging. So as you can see here, in the e-learning course, people are actually able to have an experience that's very similar to the actual MOC application. We also made this scalable, so as many people could take this as needed at any time. And we wanted to make sure that this was trackable. So when people were done the course, it was tracked in the Canadian Naturals Learning Management System, and then the company could provision access accordingly. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over now to Chris Sayer.
Thanks, Roger. So now I get the risky part of the presentation. I'm going to do an application walkthrough from our MOC process. I'm going to try to relate what Fatima showed you about the process and spoke to and how we actually manage that within Maximo. So here is Maximo. Craig, can you see my screen fine?
I can, yes.
Okay, good. So here is, I'm logged in as one of our users on site, and this is our actual Maximo implementation. So what I'm showing you here is our start centers. We use start centers very heavily in all of our applications to help us manage the process and control the flow of it. So what you'll notice here is we don't actually use inbox and assignments. We use result sets and portlets to manage the assignments of the MOCs, and they are built with delegations into the queries themselves. So on the right-hand side here is all the different stages of an MOC. So the information, if you are a champion or a discipline lead, the information will come and find you. You don't have to go out into the application and look for your records. Each one of these portlets has an action for this person that I'm logged in as. And further to that, each assignment will send an email to the individual with a direct hyperlink to that record. On the left-hand side is information for your site or your area about the MOCs. So this is how we use to control the process. So now I'm going to take you into an MOC. I'm going to move to one that's further along the process. So I'm going to jump to this record here that's MOC at the end of the process that's waiting documentation updates. So I'm going to show you some of the key stuff that we've done in the MOC application to help the process. So first off, we built a progress map that's just a visual indication of where this MOC is at in the process. We also use statuses and a combination of our own custom stage field to manage that process. And the reason why we did that is we didn't want to be locked into the Maximo out-of-the-box logic behind the scenes of statuses, so we wanted to get a little bit more granular. So we used a combination of the status and stage to help progress this MOC through the workflow. We have two main individuals on an MOC that are kind of interchangeable throughout the process. It's our discipline lead and our champion. The champion is responsible for driving this MOC through the complete process, and the discipline lead is usually the person's supervisor, but these two roles are interchangeable, so at any moment in time we have two individuals that can move this MOC along the process. The next thing is the MOC categories. We have three types of categories of an MOC. We have a permanent MOC, which follows the full process, which will go through each one of these stages in order. An emergency MOC is a fast-tracked MOC that will skip a few of the stages, go right to the risk assessment, and then over to implementation. It's a fast-tracked MOC just so they can get the change into production because there's an upset in the plant. But what the emergency will do and workflow will do will route it back through the full process after 72 hours. So it fast tracks so we can get it implemented, but then it'll route back through the process to get all the formal approvals and the engineering stuff that needs to be done. The third type we have is a temporary MOC. Temporary MOCs can be in service for up to 18 months. So what will happen here is it'll go through the full MOC process and it'll go to a status of installed, and it will stay at status of installed for 6-month intervals. And you can approve the extension of a temporary MOC up to 18 months. So you have two additional extensions that you can do. Once the MOC has been past its 18 months, Maximo workflow and escalations will force you to create a permanent MOC related to this temporary MOC. This MOC will close and the permanent MOC will go through the full process to become a permanent change in the plant. So what we've done for the reviews and approvals, we have a few different types of reviews and approvals based on, so we've taken all the different approval sections and brought them into one tab for the user so they can see at a moment in time where this MOC is sitting at and who's it's with for approval. We have a couple different types of approvals that can be done based on where you are in the process. So approval to evaluate could be one or many people, and it is a broadcast assignment. So it will go out to all the individuals at once. The last person to wrote workflow to say it's been approved will then be the person that changes the status to approved or whatever the status may be. That the user doesn't have to do anything. That's all done based off of the workflow. There's no change statuses that actually has to happen. The workflow does that for them. Same with the reviewers here. This is also a broadcast assignment. It will go to all 4 of these individuals at once. The last person to say, yes, I've reviewed this and approved it, workflow will change the status to approved. The second type of assignments we do is sequential assignments, and that's on our approval to implement section here. This one here there's up to 4 levels based on the risk of this MOC to the plant, and it will go sequentially through approval level 1 through 4, depending on the risk to the plant. We have our approval to start up. That is an operations individual who will say, yes, they have everything they need to start up this change safely in the plant, and that's also one to many. And down here, you can see our extension approvals for the temporary MOCs. Now, with MOCs, what we had before with our FCR process that was in Maximo, it basically housed all the approvals for our MOCs. What was missing from that initial process was the hazard analysis. So that's what we used. So we used the FCR process as a basis. We were using that at Thermal for about 6 years, and then we built on top of it the risk analysis portion so we could roll this out corporately. So with every MOC, there is a PHA, which is a process hazard analysis method that needs to be determined. So it's a series of 7 questions, and based on the yes responses here, it determines what level of risk analysis that you need. So if it is a score of 1 or below, it is a method of a checklist that needs to be performed. If it's a score of 2 or more yeses, the method needs to be selected with consultation of a PHA facilitator. And the methods are they could also choose a checklist, a HAZOP method, or a what if method of hazard analysis. And then they have to identify what the residual risk of that after that analysis is done. One of the new enhancements we put into Maximo is we actually allow them to create a PHA risk assessment off of this MOC record, and it goes into our application that's called the Process Safety Action Tracker. which allows them to identify which method was used, what the outcome of that method was, and what actions were determined need to be done to mitigate the risk of this MOC. So I won't go through that whole process, but it is dry from here, and there's workflow checks all along the way that the process hazard analysis has been completed and all the actions have been completed before it goes to start up or before you can close off this MOC. One thing to note with the PHA method and the residual risk, the combination of these two fields here is what determines the risk level, that the level of approvals here. So based on if this was a HAZOP with a medium or high residual risk, Maximo would automatically default 4 levels of approval in the approval to implement section here. So this MOC here, since it was determined as there was only one yes and it's a checklist, there's only 1 level of approval that was required to implement this change. You can have any number of reviewers, but the official levels of approval was just 1 in this case. So based on the checklist method, we have actually implemented the checklist into Maximo, and it's a series of 48 questions that the champion needs to go through, and this is usually done in a meeting setting, and they'll respond to each one of these questions. If a response is yes, it is required to note the consequence, the safeguard, and any mitigation that's required, and also create an action for that if it is necessary. One thing we did behind the scenes is we created our own administration app to manage these questions. Even after 2 years of going through the working committee and determining what the right number of questions and what the questions were to be, we thought that we wouldn't have to go out and update these questions all that often. But I think within week 2, we're already in the application adjusting the questions based on some of the feedback from the field. So good thing we made that questions app in the background. And from there, it's easy. It automatically populates in here. We update the questions in our administrative app. And the next time a MOC has been initiated, the new set of questions is right there on the application. So from the checklist, there's multiple types of actions that can be created, and this is all done from the MOC application. So you can have your PHA checklist, so your process hazard analysis checklist actions. So you can see question 20 was a yes, here's the corresponding action for it. This then goes into our action tracking module where it's assigned to someone to perform the action and they are responsible for closing it out. And that's an action tracking module that has a full workflow behind it and everything, but it's related to this MOC, and you can see it from the action, what MOC it's related to, or from the MOC itself. PSSR actions are pre-safety startup review actions, and they're also housed here, and they can create the action right here from the MOC application. And like all other actions, it goes into our action tracking module where it gets assigned to an individual to perform the action. The PHA actions are the actions that were created from the process hazard analysis. So if it was a HAZOP or a what if, we have a relationship that brings the actions back into the MOC module so they can see them at a glance what the status of those actions are. There is workflow checks when they go to start up this MOC that their PSSR actions are done, our checklist actions are done. And at the end of the process, there's also a check to make sure all PHA actions have been completed. So with our pre-start actions here, we've defaulted a list of standard actions to kind of serve as memory joggers for the champion. These are standard stuff, almost questions that need to be asked. Is there a pre-startup safety review that needs to be performed? If it is required, workflow will check to see that it's completed before it goes for approval to start up. Same with our safety manuals and so on and so forth. So we default these onto every record. The champion is to determine whether it is required or not, and when it has been completed. It is the champion's responsibility for that. The actions may be assigned to someone else, but it's ultimately the champion's responsibility to make sure they have been completed. We also have the documentation and closure, which is basically the same thing as the pre-start actions, but it's documentation steps that happen later on in the process. So for this example, we have 39 default ones that could possibly be required on this MOC. And we allow the users to check which ones that are required. Before this goes for closeout, it will check to make sure that the actions have been completed. We also give them the option if they want to keep the list tidy and just the required stuff. They could delete the ones that weren't required, but we've left that open. For the most part, they just check what's required and go through and do the corresponding completion. And like I said, with all of our applications, we use workflow heavily. The users don't have to go in and change statuses or anything like that. They just hit the workflow button and it guides you through the process. So for this example here, documents have been updated, complete the MOC and send for closeout approval. It'll automatically make that assignment through the Start Center, and in this case, the discipline lead would have to go in and actually approve the start. I'll just cancel this one because it will error because I haven't completed my documentation. And the error message would come up and say that there's still outstanding documentations that need to be updated. So, and I'll show you here the related records. So MOCs, depending on what area of the company you're with, may or may not require a work order to execute the change. At CNRL, we've rolled out to our major operations, our oil sands, our thermal plant, and we're in the process now of rolling out work orders in the asset management piece to our smaller conventional field, which is single operators out there with a single well out in the middle of the field somewhere in Alberta. So they don't have it, so we don't make it mandatory to create a work order for the execution of the change. The execution may be done on the MOC record itself, but in larger plants, we do require that there's a work order for the execution. So Maximo will automatically create that work order and relate it to the MOC. We have a bunch of other relationships to other applications. We have an engineering work order application, could be related to an MOC. You can create RFIs off of this MOC. And here's the assessments, so the PHA assessments. Change log we use very heavily. We have checks in there if you were to send an MOC back for more information required, if you were to cancel this MOC, anything along those lines, we force a workflow or a work log note to say why this has been changed. So you'll see this quite heavily. We use it for handing information over to other people that in the process. And communication log, so every change of hands of this MOC will send an email to the next person in line or people in line that need to review it. And it has a direct link into this MOC. So they just click on the link, they put in their username and password, and it takes them directly to this record so they can action it. And last but not least, we created an MOC summary tab. And this was a nice to-do thing that we did that pulls all the information from the MOC into one nice one-page list. So this is really good for meeting settings and that type of stuff to quickly review the contents of this MOC without having to jump through all the different tabs to see where this MOC is at. So I think that basically concludes the application walkthrough. So thank you for your time, and we'll leave it for Craig for questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very, very comprehensive MOC process and application build out. Great job, guys. I'll take a look at the questions here. So from Neil Summers, this is a great version of MOC management. I know ROI on MOC is tough to quantify, but how has it been received within the business?
It's been really well received. It's been used extensively. All of our changes go through there, and we've seen a big uptick in our actual MOC submissions. So one of the bottlenecks now is our engineering resources to handle all these changes, because now they actually have visibility and they can see their MOCs and not just manage it on an Excel spreadsheet. So more MOCs are being put into the system. And we have had some requests from our smaller conventional fields that we've rolled out to is to make it a little more streamlined. It's a little bit too robust for those smaller sites out there. So they want a streamlined application that they're going to call it recurrent MOCs. So they can create an MOC for one area and just add multiple locations or assets to it. So it goes through the process once as a full approval. And then they have a streamlined approval on additional sites that would require this MOC. And we also have a requirement for a single discipline MOC where it wouldn't go to engineering. The site's superintendent or foreman would be able to sign off and approve that MOC without having to go through the full engineering change. So it's been well received. To quantify the return on investment, it's really hard to say. It's all based off of risk mitigation, and it's pretty hard to quantify a value to something that didn't actually happen because we managed the risk. But we have seen some efficiencies, and we've seen a lot more MOCs going through the system, and it's sped up the whole process with electronic approvals.
Awesome. One more question here. It says, for remote locations that did not need to complete a work order, who entered the data in the MOC? Like, where did that work order data come from?
There would be no work order data. The champion would have it either as an attachment or a work log entry, and that would be sufficient to perform the execution of it. So once they say it's going for approval to start up, they're signing off that everything that needs to be done has been done. They have the proper documentation, the change is done to our standards, and they are signing off that is good to go. And that lies, most likely in that scenario would be the champion of the MOC that would manage that.
Excellent. This is from our friend Russell B., the product architect manager behind Oil and Gas. So he wants you to do some of his work for him. So he says, any areas where we could improve the product out of the box for the future?
Well, that's a good question. Some of the checklist stuff was a fair bit of undertaking to manage that in there. So an easy way to create, and I know we have the inspection type stuff and the work center stuff that would lend itself quite nicely to this, but then to have the users jump out into a different application and relate the records. So some way to create these checklist items easily would be a nice enhancement. And we kind of did it with our using standard actions, but we found some limitations to that. So that's about the only thing I think of off the top of my head.
There you go, Russell. It was already built good to begin with. They just built
we used most of this is out of the box capability, just like the presentation before. There's lots of workflow behind the scenes and some automation scripts to automate some of this stuff. But for the most part, it was out of the box configuration.
Wonderful. And then one last one: is there any inclusion of MOC with supply chain, like supply chain management, inventory, is this at all cross over into that realm? It looks like the question is.
On the work order side, most definitely, but not so much on the MOC side. We'll have some documentation and closure stuff that would say you need to update bill of materials or critical spares for life. I can't see it specifically on this MOC. There'd be actions. We also have additional actions they can have that would have some supply management stuff that would be sent over to them to action.
Awesome, cool. Actually, one last one just snuck in here, and then I think I'm going to cut the rest off and maybe just deal with them by email. But John McGregor asked, how did you apply the process steps to the first screen?
Well, the process steps, it's just a series of images and conditions based on the status and stage.
Awesome. Well, wonderful presentation, guys. Really appreciate you guys contributing to the community here. So thank you very much for that.